we're going to download that CSV file with 100 user accounts. We're going to copy that to probably just put it into your ISO folder on your C drive. Let's go and access my share. Make sure I've typed that in right. So the File Explorer window. You can open up. Type in the address. And it's under the Windows subfolder. So yeah, go and copy that onto your C:\ISO folder. Some added information: when you copy files from a remote location, they sometimes trip up the Microsoft Smart Screen filter, especially if you're saving stuff from email, from the internet, or from a UNC path like we did here. And the Smart Screen filter will block features. You won't be able to open the file because there could be the potential of ransomware or something else embedded into the file. Windows sometimes does that depending on locations that you copy files from. And if you trust the file and you know who sent it and you know that they actually sent it, once you've copied it to your drive, you might have to access that drive, access that file, open up properties of it, and check to see if there's an unblock checkbox. If you go to properties, does anybody have an unblock button or an unblock checkbox? And you can look under advanced to make sure that there's not unblock. So if it's not there, Smart Screen filter is likely not flag that file. I've had clients where that they would request a file from somebody, and once it came in, they would try to open a PowerPoint or a Word document, and it would not open. They didn't know why. It was simply going to the properties of it and checking unblock and clicking apply. Windows 7, I believe, or Windows 8, I don't remember which version, had a button that just had you click. Some of them have a little box down there. But opening unknown files is dangerous, of course, if you aren't expecting it. Encrypt everything and then want two Bitcoins to unencrypt your drive. That's quite expensive. I don't have that type of money. I'd just have to lose all my stuff. Okay, once you got that copied to your local drive, you can then copy it from your local drive, and we're going to paste it into our server one. Make sure I get the same one you're getting. I've had some issues trying to copy directly from the network share into a Hyper-V machine. That's why we moved it to your local C drive first. just to eliminate any potential issues, and also checking the properties of it to make sure it wasn't screen filtered blocked. Yeah. So copy it from your ISO, and we're going to launch server 1 in enhanced session mode. Some of you have a little slider. We'll just, if you have the slider, it'll be in enhanced session mode. If not, if it just popped up like mine, it didn't ask me what screen resolution. I noticed it says enhanced session on this last button here. So go ahead and click enhanced session. Now I've got my slider. Windows 10, you won't be able to log in as a non-administrator and based in enhanced mode. The servers, we can only log in as administrator, and so it's okay for us to be in enhanced mode at this time. We can fix that with group policies or group settings within Windows 10. We're not going to get to that today. So yes, enhanced session mode will allow you to open up File Explorer on the server, and let's create a folder on C drive. Yeah, no, we should never add stuff to the main controllers, but let's create a new folder, just example, and go ahead and paste. Uh-oh. Now I have to go recopy. I'm supposed to just copy and paste. Okay, try it again. Copy, paste. There we go. So CSV, comma separated value. If you finally get it pasted into server 1, go ahead and look at it. Right click and open it with Notepad or WordPad, either one. And as we look at the comma separated value, they are individual lines with carriage returns at the end. The first line is the column headings. So I've got a name column, a display name column. Notice each one is separated with a comma, hence the term comma separated value. If a particular column doesn't have something in it, so as you're coming down here, looking at the first row, we've got somebody's name, Patrick Hennigham, and then the display name is next. So as you follow in the columns, you're also, each one's comma separated. So no, let's say you get to a section, maybe surname right here. If there is no surname, you just come to comma, nothing, comma. So know that there wasn't anything in there. But everything has to match. Column, the amount of commas have to match the amount of commas in the first row. And if you don't have a value for a particular one, it's just comma, comma, and then you fill in the next value. That's what a CSV file is. If you open it up in Microsoft Excel, there'll be nice rows, A, B, C, D across the top and look pretty. That has all the information we need about those 100 user accounts to add into our Active Directory. We don't want to add them by hand. There's a big chance we can make mistakes. We're assuming this here was entered by new employees filling out a form, a web-based form or something, putting in their information, and hoping they didn't misspell their own names. People are normally better at, typing out their own names correctly than you are. Looking at the file, we've got some issues. One of the issues is the location in Active Directory is actually specified in here. It's an organizational unit called new in the contoso.com domain. Now, I know you've probably not seen that before. DC stands for domain container. You've seen Contoso, I know. And there's a .com on Contoso. So we spread that out into what's known as an X.500 typeful path. All of your domains, including the top level .coms and stuff, are designated with DC. Any organizational units is designated with OU, shortcut for organizational units. You have one more designation that you could possibly have, and that's a container object, CN. CNs can actually contain stuff like groups or the user's container object, the computer's container object. And then you have also CN equals a username. They're not a container, but they still use CN to designate like a username. You don't want to try to put stuff inside users. They don't like that. So. And it kind of, a lot of students tell me that looks backwards. You start at the deepest point in the tree and work your way up to the top. Notice we start at new, and then we go to Contoso, and then we go to .com. So just pointing out that's how that's typed in. But that is a concern for us. The concern is we need to make sure that new is in there. Otherwise, when we try to run a script to input these, it'll fail because there's no place to put them because new doesn't exist, or to put them in the wrong spot. Now we're going to go ahead and create the new organizational unit under contoso.com. Okay, see, most of y'all have got that created. It's just simply launching Server Manager, the Active Directory Users and Computers tool, and making sure that we have a new organizational unit directly under Contoso. It's specifically spelled new. So that's created. That's not going to be a showstopper for us inputting those users now. Good.
I have trouble remembering what each one is.
The buttons?
Yeah. No, like the tool.
Oh.
You use like 4 different Active Directories.
Yeah, but so far I've only been sticking to this one. There's a web-based administrative center too that is pretty nice, but with internal networking, it's hard to really show that off because you need internet to download all of the modules so you can support Active Directory and creating accounts and managing PCs. And administrative center is pretty neat. But we're sticking with just these tools for now. We'll be learning the AZ 104 in the fall. Yep, it's Azure portal and stuff. Some other showstoppers that we'll run into, whether the user account is enabled or not, this $true, the script is not going to be able to read it as a variable because it's coming in from a text file. As we import it with our CSV, it's going to read that as like quoted. It's going to read that as ASCII text. It's going to ignore that $sign and not read it as a true or false Boolean value. We're going to have to fix that issue. And the password field password fields in here. The command that we use to create accounts does not allow plain text passwords to be passed into it. The password's going to have to be pre-encrypted to be able to pass it in. So there's two issues we're going to have to work around. We've at least fixed one already, the location, the organizational unit we want these people to be put into. Let's start in the PowerShell. So from Server Manager, we're going to launch our PowerShell Ise. We played with this on Monday. And I'm not sure why it didn't just auto keep my default. I had to click the arrow beside script in the top right corner of the blue area. I've got my script pane. I'll make it a little bit bigger here for you. I don't need my commands. You don't know PowerShell. You may want to look at them over at the side, but I'm going to close it down. I don't need to see them. I need to import that CSV file into RAM so I can deal with all of those columns. Yep, into RAM. Computers, you know, you have stuff on your hard drive, but that's where you're saving stuff. To actually manipulate and deal with the data, you have to pull it into RAM so the processor can compute what you're dealing with. But first, we got to pull that into RAM. And it is pretty simple. It's actually what I said. It's import. We start typing import dash CSV. There we go. That if it's not comma delimited, I've seen some third-party systems, HR systems, dump stuff out with pipes or colons or something other than a comma. It'll still probably have .csv on, but it's not comma separated. It's separated by pipes or some other special character. If you're getting something that's a different character, that's what delimiter means. So I could put delimiter and I could specify, you know, pipe is what's separating it instead of comma. Ours are using commas, so that's the default. I don't need to specify something strange. I do, however, need to specify the path of the file. You copied it to your C drive. And as a type, this is like I like these scripting environment. They have auto completions and stuff. Here, it determined I'm typing, you know, a path, and I could type in example and then tab complete it. And then I can hit backslash and it showed me all the files in there and just down arrow and enter. I don't have to worry about misspelling or typos. Now Monday we did get-80 user. We also did get-80 computer, and we put it into a variable, correct? So we could go through a for each loop. We need to do that again today. We need to store this information into a variable so we can put it into a for each loop, because there's 100 users, and you can't just tell a computer, put in these 100 users at the same time. It's got to do one at a time. Like I said, grocery shopping, you have to pull an item off the shelf, go to the next, pull the next item off. We'll put $ users. We could have used employees or whatever. I'm going to use users for this time. We'll store it into a variable. As you're learning PowerShell or any type of coding language, you take things really slow. Does this work? If I play, I'm not going to get anything. Well, I might get an error if something's broke, but if I want to see some output, I'm going to go ahead and look at what's inside of users after I'll run my import statement. It's so small. Yeah. So let's take baby steps here. Does the import work? Does it put everything into users? If I hit F5, I should have a lot of stuff, at least 100 users, scroll across my screen. A little bit easier to see it than opening up the file in Notepad, because now it's organized every user into group, and each line is now grouped up here at the attributes, the column headings, also known as attributes in database SQL terminology. Got name, display name, given name. We've seen all of that when we looked in the file, and then to the right of it is the values. As we scroll, we now see we have 100. We took a baby step. That works. Cool. Now let's build out a loop for each. And what was the individual variable that I said was recommended by many people? Item, $sign item. In the plural variable, the one that has our list. We only created one variable so far that has many things in it, and that's users. So for each item in users, I've taught this before where I've used for each user in users, but that S was just too confusing. You got confused on whether you should be using users or user. Too complicated. So we'll have them completely separate names. We'll have our hard brackets here. Cool, right? Yep. Let's go ahead and view some stuff. Let's just view what we can do. If I type $item dot, I don't get anything. If I hit F5 and let it run, it's going to populate item, and we have nothing in between the curly brackets, but it's going to at least populate item, and the PowerShell Ise is going to learn all of the attributes that could possibly be a part of $item. So go and hit F5. It'll run. I don't get any errors. It's also checked that I get my for each loop at least structured correctly. Now, if I try $item and put a period, it's seeing the possibilities. Now I have the scroll bar. Here's all my attribute headings. So all of those that have the window icon next to them, not the little purple cubes, magenta cubes, I guess is a better term. Those are all the attributes that we need to add into Active Directory about the user. Let's go ahead and just look at password. We see password, account password, first one, yep. Let's see what happens if we just run that in view. We're not doing anything yet, but viewing at this time. But cool, we see the password. I'm going to write host, see if there's any different. I'm going to write output. I'm just trying a couple of different options there. That's not too bad. But I said this was our first issue. converting this into a secure string. If you've never done it before, you could Google, how to convert something into a secure string. Or we could come up here and do not having a drop down. Convert. Okay, so there's lots of examples on this. I left the 2 out. Convert to dash secure string. There's string is optional. We could just specify $, item dot account password. We got to specify what it is. What is it receiving? It's receiving plain text. So a dash as plain text will work in our scenario. And force has to be used so that we don't have any questions asked of us. It won't work if dash force is not there. And if you Google search to convert plain text value into secure string, you'll come across a Microsoft documentation for convert to secure string. And example 3 is the example we're going to look at doing. We're going to convert plain text value and force, and we need to store that into a variable.
So should we store that above the voice string? Like with other, if the variable below what you're trying to call, it won't call that variable.
We're going to store it here in for each because we need to generate this for every single user. Every single user has a different password. So we couldn't do that above because above for each, we don't have item. Item is only accessible within the curly brackets for each. So yeah, we have to do that within the loop. Let's see if this runs without an error. Some of these values I've run into doing it, passing it in this form into some of the commandlets. It won't be in the right form. It'll be as an array variable still, and it'll throw an error. So if we get an error, we may have to copy this item password a line up above and store the contents of it into a new variable. So let's see if we get an error. Going at F5, let's go take the baby steps. Is that ran without any problem, right? Yeah. So your dash as plain text is having an issue.
Yep. Okay.
Other semesters, I just went ahead and run the add user statement and showed that he threw 100 errors up. That error, you can't expecting secure string, receive plain text, error on the screen. Like, look, you can look at this error message and then Google that error message and figure out I need to convert this over to secure string first.
I can play with all. Sometimes you should wait till you want.
We have another issue. The $item dot enabled. Will throw an error if I try to add users with that value, because that is not being seen as Boolean. That is being seen as a text string. It's actually reading ASCII $FALSE or true, whereas $true is in there. $false is in there, but it's not actually seeing that as a code for true and false because it's coming from a text file and it's putting like quotes. You can't see the quotes, but it's auto quoting it. And read this as text, not part of a command. When we try to add the user and we pass on if the user should be enabled or disabled, that switch is not going to be able to read $true text. It has to read a Boolean yes, no, true, false, 0, 1. It's actually no 0, 1 designator. So I know that has to be fixed. And I know my if statement has, well, maybe not.
And how did you look that up? How do you say?
So I can just go ahead and create, I can create a new variable and store true or false, Boolean true or false into it. And I can do that with an if statement. I can determine what the text says. And based on what the text says, I can then run command to store a Boolean value into a new variable. So I can just completely ignore this, this variable sort of. But if I do if item dot enabled dash like, $true. The like is kind of similar to dash EQ for equal, although I could use some wildcard characters with it. If I was concerned that the T was an uppercase or lowercase or something like that, I could replace the $T with an asterisk. Equal would have to match case and everything, but for this case, as I scroll through and look, everything is $true. So I'm not going to worry about, I was worried about case sensitivity. I could do something like that. I'm going to go ahead and run, and if statement's not going to work until you build out the rest of the structure of it. At this point in time, there's a lot of curly brackets forming. I could put in a hashtag comment character in if, and then I could put in another end of the loop. That way I'm not getting confused. Everything above this is within my if statement, whereas right here would be part of my for each. It wouldn't be part of my if statement if I put something there. That can kind of help me along a little bit. Okay. If the contents of enabled is true, and I've had some students try to do this on their own in the past. I didn't probably want to throw you into that today, restructuring the course a little bit. They try to test for true, and then they try to test for false. I'm like, you don't need to test for both. it's Boolean. If you just look for one, anything else is going to be the other value. And they were putting too much logic into it and their code was not working. You got too much logic there. Remove half your logic and it works. So if I test for true and it's true, I create another variable. En. I can also force it to be a Boolean by using hard brackets and doing bool right there, so it would not accept. If Keaton, you probably did in some other coding languages where you had to define every time you created a variable, you had to define what type of data, integer, float, string, what could go into it. PowerShell auto does that, but you can force it so that no other variable could possibly be put in there. It's optional at this point in time, but I am showing you can force that a particular variable will only be able to accept a certain type of value. So that would be equal to $, true. That's actually a code, a special shouldn't. I'm not sure what the underline would be. Let me try it at the beginning. Had it in the wrong location. That looks better. No underline. So at this point now, anything other than true is going to be false. So let's walk through just real careful. If the contents of the items enable field has a $TRUE text, you see it right down here. If it has that text, then we're going to set a new variable called en to Boolean value of true. Some of the processor can understand as a 0 or a 1. If we see anything else other than true, even if it was typed wrong by HR, we're going to be on the safe side and set it to false. When the account's created, it's going to be a disabled account. It'll be there, but an IT administrator will have to manually go in and enable the account by right-clicking on it and clicking on enable. And I believe that's about going to be the only issues we're going to run into. I fixed all the issues I told you that I remember from importing the CSV file. Now, down here, after we create the true or false, after we convert the pass, we can now pass information into a commandlet that can add users into the database, the Active Directory database. So add AD it's new AD user, not add. Yeah, new AD user. They're not expected to have all of these commandlets memorized. It took me quite some time. I wasn't just sitting with PowerShell and it first came out in 07 and memorizing everything. It took me 10 years or so, or 6, to start like, yeah, I remember what commandlets I'm supposed to use where. But even right there, I started typing add, like, wait, that doesn't exist. And go back to new. So new Active Directory user.
So it's like, what we're doing now is just like us learning basics, so we don't really have the knowledge that people that work in IT, have in IT, who work in IT.
Yeah, you'll see what's capable. You'll get the terms, and hopefully you'll continue playing with some PowerShell just on your own time. I know games and exercise or whatever other hobbies can get in the way, but for a career field, yeah, there should be some time every week where you just want to sit down and fiddle with something. And being able to make up your own scenario, or asking an IT manager or friend somewhere like, hey, can you give me something doing PowerShell, just something that I should work on? That can also help. What I'm going to do now is do down here in the black area, I'm just going to do $ users and hit enter. That gives me the list of all of the items that I need to include with the new user. And it's going to help me type out this new 80 user command, because now I see sort of in order here. There's name. And I told you most like HR systems or database systems know about Active Directory because every big business has them. So there'll be an export HR database into CSV file for importing into Active Directory. So I can easily just do -name and specify item dot name. I have to specify all of them. If I hit enter, it will assume that I'm running a new command. And if I just put -display name, maybe I tab over to here, it didn't auto-complete display name for me, and it's in blue. It's thinking that might be a commandlet. It's not associating this with line 13 on my screen as new Active Directory user. So I would either have to type them all the way out in one single line and have to scroll back and forth and be really hard to find errors and fix things because it's one humongous long line. Or I could use a neat little trick that PowerShell has built in, and I can put a space and a backward tick mark. So that's your tilde character on the keyboard. And still, if you're confused, it's the left of the 1 on the keyboard. The unshifted tilde character. So tildes, probably may have seen something like that in math, an approximation symbol, but that's called tilde. So the backward tick mark, not the forward tick mark. The forward tick mark is by your enter key, forward quotation mark. This is a backward quote, and that's the left of the 1 key. So now if I hit enter and I put a dash, oh, I get a drop down this time. And if I start typing display name, oh, I see it. So backward tick mark means continue on next line, meaning this line continues on the next line. That really helps out in visual because now I can have it in column form. And me being a human, some people said I'm a robot. I can visually process this better and spot errors if I have it in up and down versus just one solid line. Yep. The one issue with that is once you get to the very last line, you don't need to put the tilde. because it needs to read that last enter instead of continuing on to the next. So it's got to see that last enter without the tilde going, oh, this is my end of the line. I need to complete the command. This is a little tedious, but it's less tedious than entering 100 users. You can also tab complete. I notice my drop down's not popping up, but I'm using tab. So I'm not typing these things as fast as it looks like. So yeah, top user, PR, I hit tab, it spelled out user principal.
I don't know what it is, but what I'm doing, like typing, it's like, or like coding, I gotta forget how to type. I don't know why, it's like my whole brain.
Well,
shuts down.
notice I'm using tab. Also notice up here I did ACC, and when I hit tab, it didn't do account password. I had to tab a couple of times. I didn't have to backspace, so just continue tabbing until it kept changing it to the right one. What am I going to put on account password? Am I going to continue doing item.account password? Not the EN one, but you're on the right track. I'm going to do $pass because the $account password is plain text, and this dash account password switch I've informed you would fail and give you lots of red on the screen saying it can't convert plain text to a secure string. So the $pass is a secure string. So this also I hit D and it went to department. I had to hit tab one more time to get it to description. And do not try to spell them out. Type a few letters and use your tab complete, because if you don't tab complete with this much, you'll make a typo. And I've got down to enable, and I was getting into a rhythm again, and I almost typed the wrong thing for the enable. We did a fix for enable. Up here on my line 7, we took the item.enable and tested it, tested the contents, and we created a new variable. And that's where I need the E in it. Not all HR systems or databases are going to output all of the, tabs up here. The main thing you would need is the SAM account name and display. You don't have to have enabled or anything else, but you don't really even have to have the password. So depending on your company and how much information they want populated into Active Directory will be dependent on which of these user attributes you're going to specify. And this here was a practice that I found on the internet somebody created for this particular purpose. I believe they actually created it for the command prompt. There's a command way to import CSV people into Active Directory. But we're moving away from batch scripting into PowerShell. And the command prompt is being depreciated. So I don't see the need to study the command prompts. Just moving forward to PowerShell. You'll notice when we go into Azure networking, we'll either have a bash or a PowerShell prompt for scripting stuff. So where am I at? I'm at division, department. Division. I'm typing and talking, and now they're getting ahead of me. Did it work?
I guess so. It looks like it worked. No errors.
Go check out your Active Directory users and computers. Refresh the new organizational unit. See if the users are in there. So my path is going to be my last one, and I got to my last one. I don't put the backward tick on it. And yeah, I go ahead and hit F5. See, watch for any errors that might appear. You can save this code as something to take with you. You would need to, of course, modify it because wherever you go work for is probably going to have different attributes. But the section of the enable and the section of the password and stuff, that's some pretty cool. You talk to the coders and they're basically, man, we just go to Stack Overflow and copy somebody else's code and reuse it and modify it to fit our needs. We don't code a lot of stuff from scratch. Yeah, that's a lot of coding. You want to get to that. You want to get to that point, but even even super smart coders don't need to try to hand code something that's already been invented. That's why there's libraries and stuff in Linux. There's already chunks of code out there to reuse.
Crazy, because you go on the website and asking questions about code, they're still answering it today. And it was like 5 years ago.
Yep. So there's all my code. There's a lot of improvement that can be added into this. Like I wouldn't want to run this again. I wouldn't want to hammer Active Directory if the users already existed. So I would want to improve this, add a check, query first, does the user exist? If so, skip, go to the next one. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. And we'll go and troubleshoot everybody else's videos, or not videos, everybody else's problems.